Hello everyone, I am back with another deep dive into a haul of one of the types of flowers that I'm growing this year. And this time it's a flower that I think is incredibly beautiful. It might even be what I consider the most beautiful in my garden, but I feel like it's underrated. And that is the China Aster. A lot of people do grow it, but it's not a plant I see often in gardens we travel to or shared online. But I am absolutely in love with these. Now, if you haven't seen my zinnia haul, I did post that last week. I will link that down below. So this is gonna be the second of the series. I'm still gonna do for sure gomphrena, fruit and veg. I look through and see what other plants I have. But from the zinnia video, I did buy another packet. I only let myself buy one, and I bought the Aurora zinnia because I thought it would look nice with the Queen Lime series. But after that, I'm gonna try to be done now. Now, China asters are different than regular asters. So China asters and asters are both in the Asteraceae family, but asters, which I think the Latin name is Symphotrichum, if I remember from my classes, is a different plant than the China aster, which is Calistephus chinensis. So basically, China asters are gonna be annuals. Asters are basically going to be perennials that can actually even spread over time based on the variety you're growing, but this is all China aster annual flowers, and they are cut and come again. Now, I actually didn't like China asters the first time I grew them, which was completely my fault. I had a mixed pack, and I don't even know if it was all China asters or just a whole different mixture of types of flowers, and I poured the packet in about 3 by 3 inches of space. So not surprisingly, they didn't do well. But the first ones, I think the next year after my failure, I grew 3 different varieties. Last year I grew 5. This year I think I'm gonna have 10 total, even though not all the seed packets are here yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'll go over the ones I've grown before and again put in photos of videos of them in my garden. I will go over the new ones that I'm gonna add to the garden this year. And then I'll go over how I grow them, care and maintenance tips. And then if you have any other questions about China asters, let me know down below. But let's go ahead and get started. There are 3 that I've been growing the longest and continue to grow every year. The first is the king size apricot. This one is a beautiful light peach, or I guess apricot color. It has so some of these are more open with thinner petals. Some of them are very thick and tight together. I would say the king size apricot kind of falls in the middle of those. Like the petals aren't completely wispy, but it's also not tightly packed together. But I absolutely love the shape of these. Now, these will get to between 34 to 40 inches tall. I believe they are some of the larger China asters that I grow. The bloom size, I would say about medium as well. It's not the largest head of the flowers that I grow for the China asters, but definitely not the smallest. Maybe it's about the second largest, but I absolutely love these in my garden. The colors of all of these are very pastel, even though they have some that are brighter as well. But I'm in love with the pastel color range that they have on Johnny's Seed. Which brings me to my next one, which is Lady Coral Lavender. This, for some reason, took me forever to figure out the name, or not the name, but the color, because it's Lady Coral Lavender. But it is a lavender flower. I don't know if Lady Coral is a person it was named after or what, but these are very similar, if not almost the same shape as the king size apricot, but they are in a lavender color. These are gonna get to 24 to 30 inches tall. So these are shorter than the king size apricot asters. I think this is one of my favorite colors of asters just because I don't really have anything else like it in the garden. There are other ones in here that are a very similar color. So this is probably my favorite color of the asters, even though in general my favorite color is pink, which brings me to the Bonita Shell Pink China Aster. Now these have some of the smaller heads of the China asters that I grow, and the flowers are very tightly packed together, the petals. So they're a bit more dense, a bit smaller, but still beautiful. They're mostly a light pink, but they do have yellow centers, which I think are really cute. And for these, they're gonna get to 32 to 36. So going in height order, the potential for the tallest is king size apricot, then Bonita Shell Pink, then Lady Coral Lavender. Now I'm trying to think, I feel like all of these produce a ton of flowers from one plant because they are cut and come again, but I specifically remember the Bonita Shell Pink producing a lot of flowers. And again, I'm hoping that I have a specific photo or video from the moment that I'm thinking of, because I think it was 2 years ago. But again, they all are very productive, but this one just seemed to be the most productive. Then next are the two varieties that I added last year and will continue to grow. The first one is Aster Hagen Light Blue. This might be my favorite one of all of the China Asters that I've grown so far, because it has the unique lavender color that the Lady Coral Lavender has. They were almost identical. Maybe the Aster Hagen had slightly more blue in it, but even though it is called Aster Hagen Light Blue, looking at it, you would say it is a lavender colored flower, but it also has the most unique flower shape. This is the one that has the very tiny wispy petals, one of the larger heads on the flowers. I just think these are so stunning. I don't, again, have anything like it in the garden. And when I was doing my giveaway bouquets, other than dahlias, because those are gigantic, this was the flower people asked about the most. So it was definitely something that stood out in the bouquet, and I just love it so much. And then the last one I added last year was the Tower Chamois China Aster. Now this kind of falls in between a pink and a peach. It's definitely more pink than the king size apricot, but it is also more peach than the Bonita Shell Pink. It's a beautiful color. It might be my favorite pink color within the range that I have here. So this one, I don't think I did the height for Aster Hagen Light Blue. That's 24 to 32 inches. The Tower Chamois is 28 to 32 inches. And this one, the blooms are described as peony shaped, and I completely agree. I love the shape of these flowers. It's not as unique, again, as the Aster Hagen Light Blue, but it is still really beautiful. I also have some photos of these flowers together to give you an idea of the different color ranges, so I'll pop those in here as I'm going through it. But those are the 5 that I have grown already. Next, we'll move on to the new ones I'm growing this year, except I don't have all the seed packets because I just ordered more 2 days ago. When I was working on my zinnia video, I was looking up either an image or a name or certain variety, and then I saw more China Asters that were labeled as new, and I had to get. So I think there are 2 on their way that aren't here yet, but I am going to share them with you in this video. Now, first of the new ones that I'm adding this year is the Tower Salmon. So I already was growing the Tower Chamois that runs a little bit more peach. The Tower Salmon, at least from the images that I saw online, is very like a true light pink. So I'm very excited to pair these together. This one also has the peony shaped blooms. So these are basically the same shape, the same height. They both are 28 to 32 inches, just slightly different in the colors that they are. Then I have Matsumoto Apricot, which is basically the same as Bonita Shell Pink, but a different color. So again, the blooms, the flowers are smaller, the petals are tightly packed together, and it does have yellow in the center. These are also 32 to 36 inches. Then lastly, of the packets that I have so far is the Miss Europe Resist, which looks very, very similar to the Tower Salmon Aster, maybe just a little bit more open of a flower head, but the colors look identical from what I've seen. I'm interested to see how different these look in the garden. These are 28 to 34 inches. Let's compare that to the Tower Salmon is 28 to 32, just a couple inches in height difference. Actually, all of these China Asters are pretty similar in height. I think the shortest is 32, the tallest is 40. So just 8 inches in difference compared to the zinnias, for example, where there can be feet difference in the height of those. So if you can't tell, I'm still heavily trending towards the pink color flowers, but let me now grab my laptop so I can see my shopping cart so I can remember the names of the China Asters that I just purchased a few days ago, and then I'm done with China Asters for this year, maybe. Okay, so I got 3 more. I thought I only bought 2 more. I have 3. And what was funny is in the zinnia video, I think I mentioned the China Asters, and someone in the comments said, I bet you got the Souffle Light Pink. And I literally just purchased it, I think the day or 2 before I saw that comment. Yes, I did. So this one was labeled as new on the Johnny Seed site. I saw it when I was looking up the name of something else, and it was just so pretty. This appears to be lighter pink than any of the other ones that I'm growing, but again, I'm just able to see that from the photos on the website. The height of these is 28 to 36 inches, and the shape of these looks kind of similar, I would say, to the Tower Salmon and Tower Chamois, but maybe a little bit more open. Actually, maybe they look very similar to the Miss Europe Resist. Kind of looks like a little bit of both of them that I already have. But again, this is a lighter pink color, so it is different and worth having in my garden. The next one I ordered was the Valkyrie Brunhild Chamois. This basically looks like the Aster Hagen Light Blue. Again, that very unique, very wispy flower head, but it is peach. So I'm doing a pink, purple, peach color combination of these. I'm really excited for this one just because I know that I loved the shape of his Aster so much, and because it was the one that people noticed, I think this will be a fantastic addition to my garden, but also to the giveaway bouquets. And then finally, I got Tower Yellow, the only yellow flower of the China Asters, but also maybe the only yellow flower that I have so far other than my sunflowers. And I do feel like I missed out on having more yellow flowers in the garden, so I am adding those. Oh no, I have Rebecca as well, but these are very, very beautiful, pale, light yellow. So in that Tower series, I have Tower Salmon, I have Tower Chamois, and I will have Tower Yellow, and all of those are the 28 to 32. So they all work together really well. Like they all mix and match together really well on the website. Again, there are some brighter colors. I know there's like a brighter pink, brighter purple, but I'm all in on the pastels for these. So now let's talk a little bit about growing, maintenance, any issues that I have had in the garden with my China Asters. I do start all of my China Aster seeds indoors. You can direct sow them, but I find that these take a little bit longer to germinate, so I like to give them a head start. These are in my 8-week before last frost batch of seeds. So these, they definitely don't grow as quickly as zinnias, but they are slightly faster than my Gomphrena. I would say my Gomphrena are one of the slowest growing ones, but these do really well, for me at least, 8 weeks ahead of our last frost. And as a quick recap, I am in Chicago. Our zone is 6A, and our last frost date is actually around like early to mid-May, despite what the Farmer's Almanac says. So I will start these around mid-March, which seems like it's so much sooner than I feel like it should be. So all these I'll be starting inside. I usually start about 4 to 6 because again, I don't have a ton of room for all of these. Honestly, at the max, I'll probably have 4 of each different variety in my garden. But then I go ahead and I plant them outside. In terms of maintenance, I would say these are also pretty low, at least from my experience. Now, these do bloom slightly later than my other flowers. So again, my zinnias are one of the earliest. Gomphrena is one of the latest. These, I'll probably see the first flowers start to open mid-July to late July, but they will bloom longer into the end of the season. I would say their bloom time is very similar to the dahlias that I have in my garden. So kind of on the mid to end of summer and then through the fall into last frost, unless something kills them beforehand, which did happen to some of mine this year that I'll talk about in just a second. Spacing. Most of these do say 6 to 12. These are ones that I do not give that adequate space to. Most of them do have a more vertical growth habit. I mean, they'll branch out a little bit, but usually not as much as my zinnias, for example. And the leaves are smaller, so I feel like they don't get intertwined as much with the plants next to them. So definitely more on the 6, 5, 4-inch spacing on these, even though it does say 6 to 12 inches. I do feel like I don't have much of a problem putting these a little bit closer together in my garden, which is fantastic based on the number of seeds that I have. Now, the Soufflé Light Pink, which is one of the packets that I don't have, did say it's an earlier blooming variety. It didn't say how much earlier, it just said earlier than I think it was the Tower series. So we'll see. We'll see if maybe I get some early July. I feel like June is asking for way too much, but we'll see. As far as sun exposure, I put them in full sun, but extreme heat can inhibit the growth a little bit. So I do plant mine mostly, unless I have any overflow, on our east facing deck. So that gets full morning sun. But then in the very intense heat of the afternoon, which is even more intense up here on a rooftop deck, I don't have as many, if any, back there. The ones that I can't fit on the east deck, they will end up on the west deck. Again, they do fine, but from my experience, these are much happier with a little bit of afternoon shade. We are very hot and very humid, so if you're even hotter, you probably want to plan to give them some shade later. If you are not as hot and humid as it is here in Chicago, then they'll probably be fine with afternoon sun as well. Water, I would say they are not an excessively thirsty plant, but they don't want to completely dry out. So somewhere in between, kind of the happy medium. So there are some plants that, let's say I have my irrigation system running on its regular schedule. There are some plants that I have that I don't even put the irrigation in because they don't need that much water. So I just water them less frequently with a hose. Then I have other plants that like more water, so I will give them additional watering between when my irrigation runs. How often my irrigation runs does change throughout the season, but I would say it's anywhere between usually every 3 to 2 days, 2 to 3 days most of the time. If it gets excessively hot and things dry out super fast, maybe I'll increase it to every day, but typically it's that 2 to 3 day range. And these are all fine with that. It doesn't seem like they need any extra water than what I'm providing them with my irrigation. For fertilizer, I will use either an all-purpose or a bloom boosting fertilizer, so lower nitrogen, and that does fine. Again, it's what I use for all of the flowers that are grown in the same bed. I don't do anything different for these than I do for my zinnias, my gomphrena, my petunias. It's all the same fertilizing. Now let's talk a little bit about the pests and diseases that I have dealt with on my China asters. They aren't terrible. They're not one of the plants that I have to pay the most attention to, but they also aren't as resistant as, let's say, my gomphrena, which I don't even know if I've ever had a pest or disease issue with it. So it's kind of in that medium range. I have seen, not aphids, I've seen scale on some of my China asters. It's not something that happens often, but I have seen it at least more than one time. I just go in and scrape those off with my fingernail and then just keep an eye on it. I might spray some neem oil on them, but it is funny how gardening changes you, because I used to be afraid of bugs and now I'm just going in with my fingernail and scraping some of those off of the plants. So that's really the only pest I think I've seen. I don't think I've ever seen a Japanese beetle or aphids on them, but again, every year can bring something new and exciting. I have also noticed powdery mildew on these, but typically that's only been a little bit, and when it's planted right next to a zinnia that gets covered in powdery mildew. I've never had powdery mildew kill my China asters. I will just remove the leaves and then usually they're fine. So even though I've seen powdery mildew on them, it's never really been an issue for me. What has been an issue for me is rust on my China asters, and I didn't really know what was happening at first, because what would happen is I would come out, and this happened both the last 2 years, not to all of them, but definitely to maybe 2 to 3 to 4 of the ones that I had in the garden, where I would come out and they would just be dead. All the leaves would be drooping, the flowers would be drooping. I wouldn't see any insects. I wouldn't see any like powdery mildew. The roots were all strong, nothing to do with root rot, but then I would turn the leaves upside down and see these little rust-colored dots on the bottom of the leaves. Some things that can help prevent rust, well, first is live in a non-humid area. Second is to water at the base and try not to get any water on the leaves, which with my irrigation system pretty much happens anyway, but again, all the humidity, there's basically always some moisture in the air here in the summer. And then maybe I should try spacing some a little bit further apart and see if the extra airflow helps at all, even though I probably won't actually stick to doing that. But once I do see some of those leaves, if I'm checking regularly, which I'm making an effort to check more often next year, now that I know kind of what issues to look out for, I'll just remove the leaves. So I basically treat that the exact same way as I do treat powdery mildew. I'll remove the leaves, I'll spray a fungicide, and then that's it. I also might just give into it if it continues to happen every year, similar to the powdery mildew. But again, it's not a disease issue that I have like with powdery mildew where all of my zinnias will get it. This has just been a handful of the ones that I'm growing in my garden. So that has killed some of my China asters a bit early, but usually these are one of the later blooming flowers in my garden. I'm trying to think if there's any other care and maintenance. It says no pinching necessary. Again, I harvest off of these constantly. I think I'm ready to go grab those 2 books that I read for the zinnias, and I'm gonna see if China asters are in there. Maybe it's just asters, but let's go find out. Let's first check the encyclopedia of cut flowers. Again, cut and come again, so you can continue to harvest to get the plant to continue to produce blooms. China asters are in here, but it's Aster, China. So it's in the A section. So China asters are known for their bright purple, pink, red, or white coloring with classic yellow centers. Clearly not describing all of the ones that I'm growing. Their oval foliage is green with toothy edges. Unlike other aster varieties, this one is special because it is an annual and not a perennial. The availability is late summer to early fall. Conditioning tips, because again, this is for cutting your flowers. Do not put foliage in the water as it rots and decreases vase life, which is a good rule to follow for any cut flowers. Change the water every few days and flowers will have a vase life of 7 to 14 days. These are one of the longer lasting flowers that I have in my bouquets, maybe a little bit longer than zinnias or very close to how long zinnias last. So they're usually one of the last varieties in my vases. Fascinating facts. Asters are supposedly great meteorologists. Closed petals on asters predict rain in the forecast. In ancient times, it was believed that magical fairies slept beneath aster petals when they closed at sunset. I'm gonna have to be on the lookout for that and see if I know when the Weather Channel tells me rain's coming, if the petals are more closed on the flower. So that'll be interesting to see. Now, let's go into flowers and their meanings. See if they have aster. They have just aster. Let me see if they have China aster. No, it's in this same section. So asters stand for afterthought. Also known as Michaelmas Daisy, Asteria, a Titan goddess from Greek mythology, ruled over shooting stars and nighttime divinations. When she scattered stardust, starburst-shaped asters would bloom where the specks landed. She lives in the night sky as part of the constellation of Virgo. And then it just says China aster means, I don't know if it means variety, because below that it says double aster means I share your sentiments. I guess China aster maybe means variety. So anyway, just some more few facts about China asters. Something, again, I've really fallen in love with. If you have any issues that you normally come across, let me know in the comments and I can try to let you know what I do or if it is something I deal with, but these are so pretty. I absolutely love them in my garden. They give more of a whimsical feel than I think any other plant. So like I said, let me know if you have any other questions and I will see you in the next video. Bye.